Welcome to Making Pondo and Talking Pondo. Talking Pondo is a podcast where we pick out two movies each week and talk about them in detail. Making Pondo is a podcast where we talk to people we've made films with and we discuss all their experiences on set.
One. All right, we're back.
And we're back.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Oh, doing very well. How are you this week?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. You know, got through the holidays unscathed for the most part.
Oh yeah, it's
Me-
still the holidays when we're recording this one. I don't know where you are, listener, but we were
yeah.
in the
This
holidays.
just got past Christmas and we're heading towards New Year's Eve without a problem in sight, mostly.
Yeah.
So this
Talking
week
Pondo.
talking Pondo, and this week we decided to do. Let's see, what were our picks? I
Oh,
gave you. I gave you. The Manhattan Project
the
from
Manhattan Project.
1986. Yes.
Yeah, 1986. Another week of watching movies, another week of going back to the 80s. We also watched the very obscure, I guess you could say very obscure, Get Crazy from 1983.
I'd say it's relatively obscure, yeah. I mean, I guess if you know Rock and Roll High School and you're into that movie, then you probably are aware of this one or might have seen it, right? Because it's Alan
Mm-hmm.
Arkush's second movie, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's I say what did I say? Fairly obscure,
Fairly
extremely.
obscure, yeah. I
Yeah,
think it is
because
fairly obscure.
like we were talking about before we got on recording, this one had home video release problems. So if you didn't catch it on cable or rent
Hmm.
the like the one and only VHS issue of it from
Yeah,
back in the 80s, you probably never caught it. Which I guess we'll start with that one, right? Like
yeah. Let's dive
I
in.
I
So
feel like it's kind of a shame in a way because I think this one stands alongside some of the others. It's obviously not the greatest movie in the world, but if you had seen it in a regular rotation at the same age back then with some of these other movies, I think it probably holds that kind of nostalgia, like an Electric
mhm.
Dreams or something.
well,
Another obscurity we might get to at some
yeah, we might. But I'll say that it felt very. One of my notes early on was like, it feels like a kind of like a David Beard movie. It felt like a
point. Oh yeah,
Pondo. It felt very much like a party animal movie. It's just kind of set up and gag, and vignette to vignette, set up and gag, kind of moving the story along, but mainly just gag, gag, gag. Everything's a gag, everything's a twist. It's that kind of comedy. It's that
hmm
like early Animal House trying to turn everything into a
right.
gag type comedy,
Yeah, these movies are all spun out from, I feel anyway, spun out from Animal House and Airplane.
right? Yeah,
And this
yeah.
one is like it's to me it sits alongside like there's Blues Brothers, there's Bachelor Party, and then there's Get Crazy. They're all kind of like sort of cut from the same cloth from that era for me in a way.
It definitely feels like it's got the manicness of Airplane with the gags of Animal House.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Um, Also ties right into Night of the Comet. My first note was that it ties into Night of the Comet real nice. Why?
Yeah, Mary
Mary,
Warrenov
Mary
alert.
Warrenov's in it. Yeah, Mary Warrenov alert. But
Mm-hmm.
also Mary Warrenov's in it, and Paul, what's his?
Bartel.
Yeah, Paul Bartel, and they're Paul Mazursky players. They did all of
Right.
Mazursky's films, and so I started digging through IMDb looking for a Mazursky link. I didn't find one, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody reached out to us and told us, oh yeah, there's a Mazursky. He helped him find
Mm-hmm.
locations or he helped with funding or something like that because normally those players play in that realm. That's interesting.
And there was the Eating Raoul, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that
Hmm.
the one they're
But
most known for? Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess we should go. Go ahead.
I'd forgotten about that. I was like, oh, Mary Warrenov alert. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was my first note because she pops up early in the film, and I was like, that's cool. Of course, I'm always, any tie to Night of the Comet,
Mm-hmm.
of course, that being the first film we ever did, how much we love that one. But I guess we should probably go over the plot of it, which is
Yeah.
pretty
What
basic.
what is that
Um,
movie about? Because most people probably don't know.
yeah. So the plot of the movie is you got this guy and he has a lease on a theater that it's a rock and roll theater, probably a 2 or 3 thousand seat kind of classic rock and roll theater, and
Yeah, like Felt Forum or something, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah, the Fillmore or something, yeah, exactly, Roseland, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got this theater, and every year he does a big New Year's Eve production, a big blowout, kind of like I don't know, local Dick Clark or whatever. And he's doing this big blowout, and a guy who used to work for him shows up, who's now a big successful businessman and wants to buy the place and buy him out. And he wants to
Mm-hmm.
knock the whole thing down and put in a stadium, 20,000 seats. And the dude's
Of
like,
course.
stadiums suck. You can't watch a good show in a stadium. It's just, you're just in a massive audience. Get the hell out of here. How dare you? And then he proceeds to put on his New Year's Eve show. And it basically, so it's, the, from there, the movie is about the stagehand and this girl that he likes and them trying to go through the machinations of putting this show on, which is handling all the bands, handling all the craziness that goes on, getting them on stage, getting them off stage. And then, of course, the millionaire guy is trying to, okay, well, if he's not going to sign the contract, then I'll go behind his back, try to get the contract signed. That doesn't work. All right, well, at one point, I'll just set the place on fire and kill everybody in it. That sounds great. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
finally, he tries to put a bomb in the place to set it off. Right.
Mm-hmm.
All the
That
while,
works.
there's a concert going on, with one band after the other playing, kind of at a giant, kind of like in one of those like rock and roll extravaganzas from the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Here's here's the Big Bopper, here's Buddy Holly, here's Richie Valens, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the movie, so the movie goes on from there. All the bands kind of show up. You have to deal with all their craziness, and they're all weird and all that type of stuff.
A lot of different genres, right?
Yeah, yeah. Punk is in there. The blues is in there. The punk doing the blues is in there. You've got a you've got Malcolm McDowell doing a great Bowie ripoff in there. Um, it's you know there's a lot in the movie that's you won't see another movie like it.
Yeah.
They haven't done another movie like that. You know, but there's a lot of tropes in that movie that are everywhere. The whole idea of like save the
Mm-hmm.
empire, damn the man. I mean,
Yeah.
Empire Records is based off of that.
And it to me, and maybe it's just because the movie is so old now, because this is what movie is what, like almost 40,
83. It's 40
40,
years old. It's
40
40
some
years
years
old.
old.
Yeah.
Uh, it felt like it was spoofing the 80s during the 80s. Like it was aware of these tropes and it
Yeah.
was already making fun of them while the decade's still happening. I feel like that helps it age really well. Like it was
Well, it definitely felt like
self-aware.
kind of shitting on punk, but like it also like it had all those tropes. Like every punker in the 80s in those type of movies, they all have spray paint in their hair, a leather jacket,
It's like a send up.
sunglasses on, and then some sort of metal, either a fake piercing or metal gauntlet or something like that. And so to me, it was like a lampoon, but it was also very in time with like that's how Hollywood portrayed punk back then.
Yeah.
You know, you go to a punk show in '83 on the West Coast or '84 on the West Coast, you'll might see a bit of that, but you're going to see also just a
Hmm.
lot of sweaty kids with no shirts on beating the shit out of each other,
Yeah.
right? That's really the aesthetic. And then that's what I liked about Lee Ving is like he just showed up in leather pants and no shirt. Like
Yeah.
this is punk.
He's basically a live action animal from the Muppets in this
Yeah.
movie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have the punk meeting the hippies from 20 years earlier who are showing up for the New Year's thing and the celebration, and then we get the blues guys in there. So it's like, and I'm like, 10 years later, you would get Lollapalooza, where each band is a different
Right.
genre on the stage. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I really felt like, and you see in the end credits, it's dedicated to what the Fillmore or one of those, because I guess Alan Arkus used to work at one of those back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's just this
Yeah,
kind of
that makes
movie
sense.
about
Yeah, that
that
tracks.
vibing in a way. And so, what, 83 still makes sense before the 80s really kicked in. So, what was my note here? Oh, yes, Electric Larry, just before the Just Say No era. Like this movie's just drenched in that LSD
it's
type
that
feeling,
whole
and
it's that whole drugs aren't dangerous, they're fun, which is
yeah, and
that's
that
that
went
late
away
70s,
real quick.
early 80s vibe. But yeah, by 84, it's like drugs are dangerous, man. They'll kill you.
Yeah, we're not
You know,
making jokes like
yeah,
that
that
anymore. Where
you do 2 lines of cocaine, you'll have a heart attack and die,
yeah,
man.
where Cad Bane from the Clone Wars shows up. And because that's what I think that was always my issue with that character in the Clone Wars. Like he looks like the guy from Get Crazy, Electric Larry. But if he
Oh
shows
yeah,
up and he has the coke that like is self spreading on the tray,
yeah,
and it's
self
like
spreading. Yeah,
you would not see that type of humor very much further
hmm
into the 80s. So what a
yeah.
weird relic just for that. Yeah.
Electric Larry was great for the audience. He's a character. Like there's one point where just the people are like, "Where's the drugs?" And suddenly out of nowhere, this guy in like a gimp outfit wearing a Cad Bane hat shows up with glowing eyes and like opens a case and there's just pills and everything's got like lightning running through it and special effects running
Hmm.
through it, and it's hilarious. And he keeps showing up. Like at one point in the movie, he charges the 5 gallon drinking water bottle,
Mm.
the dispensing the drinking fountain with LSD, and of course everybody takes that.
Yeah, and that
Um,
starts giving interesting effects as
yeah,
well. Yeah.
and it's weird. That movie is not super linear, so it's hard to talk about it in a linear fashion. It's like I said, it's a
Hmm.
bunch of gags all tied together with a sort of a Daniel Stern and this girl running through it.
Hmm.
Um, but like I said, 2 minutes in, you can tell it's going to be a gag type movie. You're not
Oh
going to
yeah.
take it seriously, and you kind of know what you're getting into. You're like, okay, this is like at one point, I mean, early on, this dude kicks a dog. Like
Oh yeah.
he just
Whoa. Yeah.
punts a 3 pound dog, and it just goes flying through the air, and you're
And
just
they
like,
make sure to
oh
show us
my
immediately
god,
that the dog is fine. Immediately, the
right?
dog is growling at him. Now the dogs have a vendetta against this guy for the rest of the movie. Even once he switches over to the good side, the dogs still hate him.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
it is brutal enough to start with a full on dog punting
yeah, full
very
on dog
early
kick.
on.
I mean, one of the characters is named Willie Loman.
Yes.
I mean, Willie Loman. I and then just for me, this is just a sign of this is when you know a movie comically is going to be really great. When Ed Begley Jr. pops up in it, that's when you know you're
Hmm.
gonna be like, oh, okay, this is gonna kind of be,
It's like here we go. That just set the level of
yeah, yeah. I did like the quote, so fuck you and fuck rock and roll. I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was pretty funny. Um,
uh,
yeah, Electric Larry the drug dealer was great. I'm just going over my notes. The band's arriving. I like that whole like the Nadas show up and then the hippies show up and the
hmm.
blues guys show up, and that was fun, kind of wild.
And looking at it now, it almost felt like some kind of prototype for the show 30 Rock. Like we got to get all these things going, and it's behind the scenes of what happens at the show, and there's kind of that
Mm.
weird loose, and sometimes they would go off in weird little non sequiturs and stuff.
Um, it was surprising to see Robert Picardo.
Oh
That
yeah,
was
that was one of my notes too. Yeah.
yeah, it was like Picardo, nice, the Hollow Doc from Voyager, right on.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love you some Picardo, right?
Yeah, I thought I had that written on here. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that was somebody I had to look up too. Where I was like, "Is that who I think it is?" And then you
Yeah,
fall down another IMDb rabbit hole as you
yeah.
have to
The
look
minute
at
I heard his
stars.
voice, I was like, is that Robert? Because he's got a very distinctive voice.
So we're what 7, 8 weeks in doing this, and
Yeah,
two of the movies, at least two of the movies, have already had prominent Star Trek guest stars in them. From Night of the Comet, right? Because isn't Hector
Hector. Yeah,
show up in a bunch of episodes, and now we have the guy
yeah.
who's the fire marshal, which
Robert Picardo. Yep.
it almost felt like a pre Kevin Smith right there too, where I was just like, if there had been Kevin Smith movies in the '80s, I'd say this is what he'd be making something like. So, oh yeah, I said that Blues Brothers, Bachelor Party, and Get Crazy kind of form this. What? How do you pronounce it? Triumvirate. Triumvirate
I think
of
you got that right.
movies from the early '80s of that weird kind of sub genre where it's just all out abandon, but also music related. And there's definitely, like we were saying earlier, it all stems from the Animal House airplane. But also, I would almost throw Hollywood Nights in there because the
I could see
vibe
that.
was kind of that,
Yeah, yeah, I
that
could see that.
that chaos,
Hollywood Nights seem to have a little more of a.
a
That
little
one
more of a
feels like a
story. Yeah,
little more of a story, a little more full, like a Bob Clark, like
yeah.
Porky's or something.
And
Not Bob.
I
Is Porky's Bob Clark?
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I got that. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I guess these you can kind of trace this kind of madcap back to things like it's a mad world in a way. It's not exactly a Cannonball Run type thing, but
It's kind of the same thing though.
mm-hmm.
It's vignettes with little pieces with little
Yeah,
fence posts that are moving the story along.
yeah. You could see that they must have kept their costs down by shooting mostly in one location. It was a
Yeah.
big location, but mhm.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
see what else did we have here. So last week we had a movie that featured Nick Castle from Halloween
Mm-hmm.
One, and then we
Right.
had a movie that had Dick Warlock from Halloween Two, and so you can see where I'm going with this. This week we had a movie with Stacy Nielkin from Halloween Three. She was Tom Atkins' co-star in that movie, and she was the little sister, the one who ends up getting
I
serenaded
thought I
by
recognized her.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I thought I recognized her.
So
I just
we
couldn't place
we keep getting close to that for
her.
some reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, hey, she
Fantastic.
said that she felt like he was singing directly to her, and spoiler, that's what ended up happening. So, and yes, there was a small window in the '80s where John Densmore was acting.
Yeah, he was in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Indeed,
fairly
he was
prominent
indeed in this movie.
background role.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, he didn't really say much until the
yeah.
end.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, just let me jump in here because this is one of my
Oh, of
notes.
course, yeah.
I am absolutely convinced that Malcolm McDowell read this script and was on the fence. He was on the fence about taking the role until he got to the scene where he had a conversation with his penis.
Yes.
And he was like, "Yep, I'm doing this. That
I'm
I am
not doing
doing this movie. I am going to be on film
it.
talking
Uh-huh.
to my own penis.
Yep.
Guaranteed.
Yep.
Guaranteed right now that's happening."
Yeah. We never put a spoiler alert at the beginning of the episode, but I mean, if you listen to the show, we presume you've watched the movies already. Sorry, look, you can still watch the movie and enjoy it, but
I mean, look, I mean, it's yeah. We assume that you've seen this movie. If not, you should. Hey, it's not a
yeah,
spoiler. You should go watch Malcolm
yeah,
McDowell talk
yep,
to his penis. It's
yeah.
hilarious.
And so it's because when Electric Larry doses everybody up, that's one of the effects that happens to him is,
Right.
but then we find out at the end that even John Densmore's character can hear it.
Yeah, it's well, it's like that. It's like the reviewer said about our last movies.
The
Like
new manager.
you got somebody breaking the fourth wall, and then somebody behind them breaking it too, and it's like breaking the ninth wall, and it's kind of
Hmm.
like Densmore breaking the ninth wall there.
And yes, that was, as far as I think, because this was kind of a crummy copy we watched. Yes, that was Linnea Quigley making out with John Densmore during that
I thought
one
so.
scene.
I
And
thought so.
also, Michelle Bauer is hidden somewhere in the background of this
Yes.
movie, but I do not think Frank Stevens is in this movie. So we have two out of the three big scream queens from the '80s hiding in the background of this film. I had completely
I
forgotten
mean,
about that.
they stuck so many people in. I mean, Daniel Stern is in this movie. Alan, what's his name? Is it Alan Gorkin?
I think so, yeah.
The Yeah, Alan Gorkin is in this movie. I mean, so many. Alan Garfield, sorry,
Mm,
or Alan Gorwitz is what I'm thinking. His name is. That's how he's credited. Um, you got Daniel Stearns, you get Miles Chapin's in it, Ed Begley, Lou
hmm.
Reed's in the friggin' thing, Lee
Yeah, Lou
Ving,
Reed.
John
Yeah.
Densmore, Robert Picardo, Fabian's in the friggin' movie, Franklin Ajaye's in the movie. It just keeps going. Mary Warrenoff. It just keeps going and going and going. Clint
Well,
Howard is one of the ushers.
she, blink and you'll miss Clint Howard.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, you look just like him, I think he says, and then
Hmm.
boom, that's the big line.
Yep. It's like the concert sequence from Rock and Roll High School, and he made like a whole movie out of just that.
Hmm.
It felt like what
Hmm.
is like a 15, 20 minute sequence in that movie is extended to almost near feature length.
Yeah, I mean, if you liked Rock and Roll High School, you'll probably enjoy this movie. If you didn't like rock and roll, probably not going to like it.
Hmm.
It feels very much along the same lines.
Yeah.
Um, I
It's,
heard them do a song called "The Sky Is Crying," and that was for me a surprising one because that's always thought that was a Stevie Ray Vaughan song, but I guess
oh,
he did it. That was a cover for him. I guess I'm not sure. I'd have to look up when "Sky Is Crying" came out.
okay. Yeah, it's from that time period and from around,
Oh
I
yeah, it's
call
by
it from
Elmore James.
around
Listen,
78 to 83, where I kind of refer to it as the Jackie Martling period of comedy. This is when,
Jackie the Joke Man Martling.
yeah, this is when Jerry Lewis was still putting his last slapstick movies out during this era. And so, and a lot of the eight companion movies were out. So you get this weird flavor, and this movie kind of has a little bit of that almost so dumb it's painful. It's a joke, aren't you laughing? It's funny,
Yeah,
kind of.
it's very
And then that would go to, yeah, then that
unknown
would,
comic type of
yeah,
humor.
like
Yeah,
Night Patrol or something like that. And
yeah,
then this kind of comedy would come in with the new year of 84. it, that Bachelor Party is the pivot in a way because it's that type of humor, but now we've switched it to total 80s. Now
yeah,
it's everything
yeah.
that people talk about when they have the nostalgia for 80s clicks about a year after Get Crazy, I'd say.
Yeah, for me, it was all the people at the like all the people at the Butte Blues funeral, for instance, right? They were like when they cut to the all the people at the that are attending and they're all blind, they're all walking away because
Yeah,
they're all blind. That's that
that,
that's that airplane type of
yeah.
gag that constantly is happening throughout the
Hmm.
film. It's that unknown comic Jerry Lewis, like he said, aren't you laughing? And to me, I had this thought where I was like, if I was 12 and when this movie came out, I think I was
Yeah,
13,
yeah.
I would have been laughing my ass off. I would
Hmm.
have thought this was the height of like this is genius. Like holy crap, there'll never be a funnier movie.
Hmm.
But now you look at it and you kind of go, ah, it's just one kind of, some of them land and some of them really don't.
Hmm.
Um, the Lou Reed thing is just friggin' weird.
Oh
And
yeah.
like I can't imagine like that's another thing where they were just like, hey Lou, you're gonna be this weird character that just rides around in a taxi the whole movie trying to write a song, And
Hmm.
he went, yeah, that sounds fine
Yeah.
as long as I don't have to be on screen with anybody else. That sounds great.
Now, see, I discovered this movie, I think, in the mid to late 90s. This
Yeah,
is
I
one of,
saw it on cable back in the '80s. Yeah,
oh, okay, so you had
yeah,
seen
no,
it
I
back
remember it.
then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I didn't know what it was, and this is one of Gene Mott's favorite films of all time. And so he was,
of
playing
course
it
it
on
is.
public access, right? And so then I would watch it then, and then get crappy copy after slightly less crappy copy as the years go by. And watching it this time, it's finally starting to make more sense. Like I've seen it enough times throughout the years where I'm starting to remember pieces of the different vignettes and piecing them together. While as early viewings, it just felt so incoherent to me. Like
Yeah,
it's throwing so much at me. I'm not. There's a
yeah,
concert. What's going on? And this
yeah,
time I'm like, oh, I totally, because I know the
yeah.
characters now. I've seen the
It's
movie
not so
enough
chaotic. Yeah.
that I can kind
Well,
of live in it and kind of be like, oh, okay. And so I like it a little bit more the more I watch it throughout the
it
year.
also has that it has that that's another facet we didn't talk about, but it has that cocaine 81 1980
Hmm.
1941 neighbors
Oh, yeah.
type of feel where it's just like, man, there was a lot of coke on this movie set. I guarantee it. There was a lot of blow running around. I mean, there's a lot. It's just manic
Yeah, they're
to a
not
certain
trying to
extent.
hide it.
No, no, and that's part of the movie is like drugs are fun.
Yeah.
Drugs. You do drugs, you have a good time. Do drugs.
Hmm.
Drugs are great. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it was
Um,
the first Reagan administration. Yeah.
yeah. But here's my one of my other notes. I can honestly say they don't make comedies like this anymore.
Oh
Like
no.
you're not gonna see a movie like this again. You're just not. You should probably, just if you haven't seen it, watch it for that reason only.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not gonna see anything like it. It's like going to a wild ass circus. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
you just you've never seen a circus like this in your entire life.
And if you haven't seen it and you're thinking about watching it, well, of course, by the time you hear this, it's not going to be New Year's. But if you start it at about 10:38 p.m., it'll hit New Year's right about the same time in the
There you
movie.
go. Yeah, so this is a New Year's holiday type of movie, I guess. Yeah,
And it
yeah.
also had surfing. Just like last week, we had a movie with surfboard, and this guy was literally crowd surfing with a surfboard. And another weird thing is the theme song of
I
this
I
movie is
I
by
had the note too.
Sparks.
By who?
Sparks.
Oh, really?
They did the theme song, so they were everywhere. It seems like.
Wow. Um, Here's a joke that you would never get away with now, and not that I'd like to do that whole comparison thing, but
Oh,
when
there's a lot in this movie.
when the blues guy gets there with his guitarist and he goes, "I'm not going on stage. Look who you got backing me up." And it's like, it's supposed to be a blues band. This is a Jews band. And I was like,
Yeah, yeah. It's like what?
wow.
hmm
But actually, they kind of turned the joke into something kind of funny.
Then
Like,
they end up
they didn't.
rocking, and we know the
Yeah, they
characters
ended up
by the end of the
rocking
movie.
and
Yeah.
nobody cared, and so it kind of worked out. But
hmm
it was just, at the first place, I was just like, holy
Go,
crap.
ooh,
Well, okay.
yeah. It's like, well, 1983. There you
Uh,
go. Just like Malcolm McDowell's extended backstage break with all the groupies, and it's like, oh my
yeah,
god.
yeah.
I
And
know it's
that was
supposed
the
to be the excess, but yeah.
yeah. Then that's when I realized, I was like, Malcolm McDowell has been on set with a lot of naked women in his career. Like, he's been on set with a lot of naked women on his career.
That was the 70s.
The When
And the,
Electric Larry reappears at the end with all the Nada band, and he pulls open all the coke, and one of them goes, "Are you married?"
oh
I
yeah.
thought that was probably the funniest. I laughed. I just thought that was hilarious. It was a good moment. Um, and of course, Malcolm's girl has sex with the nerd, and of course the nerd is hung. Like,
Oh
that
right,
trope is
yeah.
just like
It
that
even
trope is
managed to
just,
squeeze that in. Yeah.
yeah. Even, man, it's just gag after gag and trope after trope in this movie.
hmm
Some, I guess that's earlier than Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah, just by a year. Yeah.
But still, it was less. Yeah,
And those it's all derivative from those two, right?
yeah,
And yet it falls more into this weird subgenre because it's music based, so it falls more towards your Blues Brothers more than your Revenge of the Nerds, but yet there's still crossover,
yeah,
much like our next
yeah.
film.
Um, I kept honestly, this is another movie where I kept checking to see how much time was left on it.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of those movies where I was like, it's not keeping me.
If you would
It's
have had
not.
a better visual copy, it
Yeah,
might have been easier to take.
admittedly, that to be fair to the audience, the copy that I watched was pretty bad. The only copy I could find was on YouTube, so I watched it, and it was not a good copy.
Yeah.
So
You can get a
that had
Blu-ray now
I
of
had trouble with
volumes.
that, but I just there were just points where I was just like, how much time's left?
hmm
Like, for instance, when Malcolm McDowell walks on stage after he catches his girlfriend having sex,
Oh yeah.
after he's just had sex with 5 women. Somehow he's upset that his girlfriend has decided to have sex with someone else. And so he starts having an existential crisis, and he walks on
hmm
stage and sings that slow song, which to me was a surprising choice for the filmmakers, because it slowed the movie down. Like, the
Yeah.
movie's frantic up to that point, and then suddenly it kind of hits the brakes while he does this big slow kind of number. And again, it's very Bowie-esque in my opinion.
hmm
Um, yeah, it seemed like an interesting choice.
Yeah. That's about all I have on that one.
Yeah, my last note was also fuck Lou Reed. Um,
Well, he's barely in it, at least. So.
yeah, I've never liked Lou Reed, and I think I just, you hit me up in the comments if you have a problem with that. But yeah, anyway, as just as a joke, fuck you, Lou. So,
questions, comments, concerns.
Yeah, questions, comments, concerns, please talk to Marty. Um, so I guess we can go to the ratings if you don't have anything else.
Yeah, I think ratings are fine. Yeah, I'm gonna say, I mean, I like it, so I'm gonna say 2.5. I know it's
Hmm.
probably more of a two, but the more I watch it throughout the years, the more it starts to make more sense to me. And I like
Hmm.
some of this, the overall vibe of it. It's another one of those I could put on and not pay attention to it and watch. You go look up and be like, oh, I like that part. I like that part. Maybe if I had a better copy, maybe widescreen even, I might enjoy the film a little more. But there's parts of it where it also is like, yeah. So 2.5.
Hmm. I struggle kind of with it. I think, again, I think if you haven't seen it before, you should see it. It's an interesting movie. It's a singular movie. There aren't a lot of movies like it, and you also see a lot of tropes that show up in other movies in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, it's a tough movie to watch in certain respects.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also think that if you're going to have a movie with original music, then the original music should be better than that. Like,
Yeah.
spend a little more time. If you're going to have original music, spend a little more time on it. Like, because there in the 80s, there were a lot of movies that came out with original music and it was fantastic, just made specifically for the movie, and it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or just use a soundtrack, use songs that are already out there that are already good, and license those and use those, right? And there was kind of a mishmash of both. They did a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of blues rendition stuff that they could probably get cheap, but they didn't really do anything new. Anyway, so I'd say like two. I'm gonna go two,
Yeah, that's
just
about
because I
right.
think you should just because you should probably see it at least once. I'll go two. Man, when are we gonna get to the 4 and the 5 star movies on this show?
Well,
You never
they
know.
could be next week for all you
You
know.
never know, right?
They could be the
So then
next
we
movie.
so then we moved into the Manhattan Project, right?
Yeah, a couple years further into the
Three
'80s.
years later.
83 to '86. It might as well be a different decade at this point. But it wasn't the last decade of the '80s, which I called 1987 to 1994. But that's going off on a whole other tangent. Right now, we were at that tail end of that 1986, the very end of hippie '60s value
It's
filmmaking.
86 to 87 is
Yeah,
right
by
about, and then
86,
88 to 91
I
is a
say that
whole other bubble.
RoboCop is that line in the
Yeah,
sand from
yeah, RoboCop is definitely a
it
line in the sand. You're
switches.
right.
But here we are with green glowing radioactive goo. It must be the '80s. It's the Manhattan Project. It's that subgenre of the mid '80s about teens who were good with science. Now, I've tried to remember every one of these movies.
Hmm.
Some of them are more off the beaten path than others. I'm going to try to keep it very concise here. Movies like War Games,
Sure,
Explorers,
sure,
Weird Science,
sure,
My Science Project,
sure.
Revenge of the Nerds,
Maybe a little bit. Real
Real,
Genius is in
Real
there.
Genius,
Uh huh.
Daryl,
Daryl, that's another good one.
Space Camp.
Space Camp, sure.
And then you could like Flight of the Navigator. I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe
maybe a little bit. Maybe, yeah.
Solar
Yeah.
Babies is probably a step
A
too
little
far.
bit of a stretch. Yeah, yeah.
It's that genre, and this one might represent it better than all of those because this one has a little bit of everything. You know, watching it again after so long, it's like a distant echo, a dream. I saw this movie so many times in the '80s. Like
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned earlier, I didn't see it in the theater either. Saw it
Yeah,
on
me either.
VHS, on
Yep.
cable. Every time it
Saw
was
it on
on,
cable
you'd
a
watch
lot.
it.
Yep. Yep. Every time it come on, you
And
watch it. Yep.
it watched it so many times and then
Hmm.
didn't see it for so many years. So
Yep.
watching it
It
again, especially
it
like the first
disappeared
hour of it,
completely.
I remembered all of it as it was happening. So that's what I mean by that echo. Like it kept like freaking me out. Like, what was that saying? Reawakening dead
Constant
dreams.
deja
So,
vu.
like, oh yeah, yeah, it was very, very
Mm.
trippy. One of those movies where you go, "What are you doing to me, making me watch this?" But I'm enjoying it, right?
You're
Because like I
welcome. You're
like the
welcome.
movie, but it's just such. It's like looking at old photographs or something, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's totally 80s. Remember when life felt like this movie?
I do.
I do.
I do.
This is a very good representation of what that decade felt like.
Yep. It's
Oh my,
very rooted in the 80s.
there's some.
Very just, yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you
It
know,
has that, it stinks like the 80s,
yeah.
man.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of people don't remember this movie. I'm guessing at this point because it's become kind of obscure. But you know who did remember this movie? I think
Ooh.
the creators of The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, dude, yes. That kid is Sheldon. Without the more severe
Yeah,
tilt of the personality, that's
uh-huh.
Sheldon.
Yeah, he
I
built a
built a I,
bomb
I
right
built a
there.
nuclear device in my backyard. Yeah, I mean it's him. Like it's just I mean they yeah, I
All
mean
the shit with the lasers and Leonard
yes.
and yeah.
Yes, everything like as soon as I watched that movie again I was like that's where they got Sheldon, that's where they based a lot of Sheldon from. They
Oh
went
yeah.
somebody was super inspired by that movie and watched it and said I'm gonna base a character off this. And then there it is.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So we should probably do the plot of the movie
Yeah,
again, folks. We
what is
should.
this movie about? Well, it's
So
not Oppenheimer, but
the plot of this movie is very basic and simple. Basically, it starts off with a team of scientists who are testing a new form of purifying uranium. The government's there, the test works, and they get uranium that's like 99.9% pure.
mm,
Super, super, super high powered stuff.
so
So the
strong
government,
they don't even know what to do with it.
yeah, so strong they're just like holy crap. So the government sets them up in a lab and sets them up in a small town in like I think it's Connecticut, right?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I didn't know
somewhere
that. Yeah,
somewhere in the kind of the quiet pastoral
that makes
northeast in a
sense.
small
Yeah.
town. Yeah, and they set him up in a lab there. And so the dude goes out to the guy who's John Lithgow plays this part. He's the head scientist, and he goes out to find an apartment, meets this woman who has a kid who's basically like Sheldon. He's a super smooth, super smart kid, and he figures out pretty quickly that this dude isn't on the up and up, and then figures out that he's working at a nuclear laboratory. And so he meets a girl who becomes his girlfriend, who's a like she's basically like an activist. Basically, like her parents were hippies, and she's kind of an
Mm-hmm.
activist. She's a journalist, wants to be a
See,
journalist.
it's got that little vestige of hippie filmmaking in it.
Yeah,
Real
yeah, it
beautiful
does.
place.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so he and her, they basically make a plot to steal some of this plutonium. She thinks they're going to make an article about it and turn it over to the New York Times
Right,
and win a
right.
Pulitzer. His plan is to make a bomb, a nuclear bomb, and take it to the New York Science Fair and win first prize.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Very like, and that's where
As
it's
you
so
do.
Sheldon like. Like
Right.
he's so like completely. All he can see is winning the science fair. He can't see any of the fallout of what he's doing at all.
Mm-hmm.
All he can see is this. Oh, okay, it'll be I'll win the science prize. I'll be the biggest guy. So from there, basically, the lab finds out that they're missing some plutonium. They start to backtrack. The government gets involved, and the kids have to run from the government because the government just comes in and starts like drugging kids and asking them questions, and they're not screwing
Yeah, that's
around.
where it starts to get a little weird, I thought,
It
but
gets very dark. It's and then and basically at the end you have uh, he's basically black. He's basically like, look, I'll just arm the damn thing and blow us all up if you don't let people
mm-hmm.
know what's going on here.
Yeah.
And the government tries to kill him, and it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the bomb he made is faulty
Mm-hmm.
because he's a kid and he doesn't understand everything about how to make a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
And they at the end there's this really tense disarming scene where they have to disarm the bomb. Um, and then they tell the public what's going on. There's a very much kind of a Greenpeace sort of message at the end of it.
Let me cross-reference
What are
something
you cross
real
referencing
quick
there? So
here.
that's the plot of the movie. It may sound a little simple, folks, but in the '80s that was a pretty compelling thing. You
And
know,
so that makes four movies in a row that are all about defusing bombs.
really?
I don't understand how it happened. It just happened here on Talking Pondo. We had Get Crazy. Remember, they had a bomb that they
Oh,
had
that's
to get
right.
rid of.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Abyss, he has to stop the bomb.
Right.
And then what was the Dark Star about bombs
Dark
that
Star.
wouldn't disarm
Yeah, the bomb that
themselves.
would. Jeez, you're right, man. That's a weird theme.
So yeah, we've
All
managed to
right,
go through
folks.
that. Up next week, Octopussy, where James Wan shows up dressed as a
Right.
clown and
Let's keep that
deactivates the
going.
bomb.
So, so anyway, getting back to the
Also
film,
1983.
right away, this is a film just like Get Crazy with a lot of character actors and a lot of good supporting actors
Mm-hmm.
in the film. John Mahoney's in this movie,
Yeah, he doesn't even
the
show
dad
up
from
until like
Frasier.
halfway. Yeah.
He's one of the bad guy generals. But you've got early what's the young lady's name from
Oh,
Sex and the
Cynthia
City?
Nixon.
Cynthia Dixon's in it. Um, you've got Lithgow. You've got what's the
Mm-hmm.
mom? Uh,
And then in
I
a
can't remember.
surprising role, it's Timothy Carhart alert, which
Yes, Timothy Carhart is in this movie.
he's an actor from the movie The Party Animal, which is where Pondo comes from. And so now we have
Always
finally
love to
gotten
point
our
out
first
sightings.
Pondo actor in. It's funny
This is
because
our
Get
first Pondo
Crazy,
sighting.
yeah, Get Crazy, you said felt like a David Beard film,
It
who
did
directed Party Animal and My Chauffeur, which we'll probably
exactly.
get to at some point. But
Oh yes, sir.
I was like, is that Timothy Carhart? Like, I didn't remember that. And I think you told me that like a week or so ago when you rediscovered this movie. But it
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's funny. He was, you might know him as he's kind of like, what does Bill Murray call him in Ghostbusters? The Dip.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
The
that guy
drip.
in, yeah, the Drip and
He
Ghostbusters.
played the he played the crappy ex-husband of Marg Helgenberger in CSI. They killed him off after a
Ah,
couple episodes, after a couple seasons, but he was the crappy abusive ex-husband.
and
He was the sub operator
Hunt for Red
uh
October.
in Hunt for Red October. Yeah.
In
We obviously know a lot about Timothy Carhart's career from
yeah,
Get
you
Crazy.
know, we track anybody from those movies as we thought we got a kick out of those movies, but you see him in this film as the guy who helps fix the flat tire.
Yes, he helps fix the flat tire, and then he says something gross about the young lady.
Yeah, in fitting with
Um,
the Studley character from the Party Animal.
yes, and fitting with character. Yes. I also noticed that one of the kids from Dead Poet Society is in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh
he's the one
yeah, yeah,
actually that
right.
he's the one that he's the lead character who kills himself. I can't remember that actor's name.
Robert Sean Leonard. I had to look
There
him
you
up
go.
before the
Yeah,
film
Robert
too.
Sean Leonard. Yeah, he's a great actor, but he's
Very
in it
young in
early on.
this. Very
Hmm.
young. You know, every shot I remember it all. From the cocoa being cut off that spoon in the beginning
Yep,
to
yep,
when he
yep.
threw those frisbees down those hallways and I just started
Yes.
laughing.
The truck where he's whipping the truck out behind the security guard to get the stuff out.
Oh yeah, I really like when how he breaks in there and
Uh
gets it
huh.
all out. And you know,
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I had another false memory like with the Abyss in a way, where I thought those lasers came into play in Act 3 a little more,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
Lithgow did something with the lasers. And but
No,
no,
that's
I was
early
just
on where he's lighting a
misremembering.
cigar with him. You mistook that. Yeah.
And it is nice where it's like, I'm going to show you every little trick in here, and then you're going to come
Uh
in
huh.
later and do them all in order to steal the shit.
Exactly.
Or it could be something called Alberto VO5.
Shampoo.
He replaces the plutonium goopy green gel with shampoo with glitter in it.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have to basically in the what you learn in the film is that you can't just store plutonium. You have to suspend it in some sort of gel or liquid. And so they
Mm-hmm.
suspend it in this green liquid that looks like basically like dish soap, and he with little
Yeah.
flecks of silver in it. And so he takes tinsel and he cuts it up and he sticks it in a bunch of green dish liquid, and
Mm-hmm.
he swaps the bottles out because it
Yeah.
looks exactly the same.
He uses
And
that
he doesn't
little,
get discovered for a couple weeks
yeah, like four
while
weeks
he's
or
making
some
his
shit.
thing.
It
Yeah.
reminded me when I lit the carpet on fire as a kid and hid it. It took about 4 weeks until they found it. It was like that
Right.
hole in the wall that he did.
Oh my God, that's great.
So he used that that little RC truck reminded me of Toy
Mm-hmm.
Story. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Or I should
One of the
say, Toy
things
Story reminded me of this.
one of the things I found interesting that they kind of pulled off, which I, you don't realize it until until you're halfway through it, but there's a section of that movie basically after he steals the plutonium, he goes into a making the bomb montage. And that montage lasts for like 8 minutes.
Okay, so you want to talk about the montage? Okay.
It's two whole long it's a whole song, and then it stops and another song starts,
Yep.
and it goes for like 8 minutes. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I called it. I wrote my notes. Happy montage music. And then I realized it's like in those 50s science shorts. It's almost like Ren and Stimpy or something. It's like, this is way too cheerful for music about somebody building an illegal
Making a
nuclear
friggin'
bomb.
bomb. Yeah, yeah.
That's something
I
at the
just thought it
time you
was
never
I just thought
noticed.
it was like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, you pulled that off. That's like 8 minutes with no dialogue at
Yeah.
all. It's just
Mm-hmm.
bomb montage music.
Because it's the 80s and we gotta have a
Mhm.
montage. And we've gone
Yeah.
this long in the movie and we haven't had one yet. So,
And it's not like it's the new Madonna pop song. It's just some straight up
oh no,
score music.
it's the score that feels like it's the 70s.
It's just score music.
I mean, looking at this movie now and being so far away from it, at the time in 1986, that feels like 1986. Now,
Hmm.
being
Hmm.
2023 is the time of this recording, almost 2024, uh, it almost feels like it's the damn 70s in a way. You realize there wasn't that much difference. I mean, there was, but there wasn't, you know. Some of the
I,
styles hadn't changed much. The
I think
score of this film,
yeah, I think enough. I think it was different enough.
it was
I think,
different enough,
but
but
yeah,
more similar to
I
that
mean,
now than we are to 86 here, I guess. Yeah, I just when I look at old movies like this, I realize just how close those years were to each other. While at the time it felt like it might as well have been 20 years difference because I was only 8 or whatever. But 1986, I think that was the year I became completely, fully film obsessed. I think I
mhm.
saw every movie that came out that year. Now, of course, I saw
I
them
think I
on
did too.
VHS or cable
Yeah.
in 87 or 88, but I think I saw everything.
Hmm.
I mean, from the Whoopee Boys to
Yeah.
the
Oh, the
what was
Whoopee
that
Boys.
Ted Danson movie with Howie Mandel
Oh my
to
god.
Armed and Dangerous, Aliens. I mean, you name it. I
Yeah.
probably saw every movie in 1986.
Hmm.
About Last Night.
License to Drive.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
But and so this movie's firmly in that
Movie
where I was,
Violations is what I was
yeah,
thinking of. Yeah.
where I was going to the video store, Duke's Video, every week on like
Hmm.
Tuesday or whatever new release day, and this is one of those movies where I probably got it the day it came out and had
Yep.
already watched it within two
Yep.
hours of it being on home video because I used to
That's
cut out newspaper clippings and shit, so I knew.
that's one of the things about a movie. Like back in the day, people don't understand, and not trying to be an old cranky whatever, but
Get off my
when
lawn.
VHS stores, which were awesome. First off, VHS store, you'd walk in and you'd get to do the new
It was the
release walk,
video store.
where you go to the video store and you'd walk the new release wall and just check out anything new on the from that came in on Tuesday. But when you rented a movie, you had 2 or 3 days tops to watch it. Some were 24 hours. If it was a new release, it was 24 hours. Bring it back. If you rent it on Tuesday, it better be back on Thursday or you're paying a late fee, period.
Right. But you would watch
And
the
so
shit out of it even if you
you
didn't
would
like
watch the shit out of it. So you'd rent the Manhattan Project on a Friday and you'd have to have that shit back on
it.
Sunday
Mm-hmm.
before noon. And you would watch that thing 3 times. You'd watch it Friday night, you'd watch it Saturday morning, then you'd watch it Saturday night.
Oh, I
Maybe
haven't
even
watched it
watch it
yet.
again Sunday morning before you turned it in.
Because various people in the house would watch it at different
Yeah,
times. Like, oh, I haven't
yeah,
watched it yet.
exactly.
I want to watch it before you take it back. So that would be like
That's
the
right.
fourth time you saw the movie.
Yep. Yeah, and of course you'd watch it every time, no matter
Yeah.
who was watching. You were always sitting down to watch it again, right?
Oh
Like
yeah, it was
I'm going to
still
watch
a
this
big
again.
deal. It was still prestige viewing. It was like
Mm-hmm.
this is this brand new movie, probably
Yep.
retailed for $79 on the
Yep.
tape, and
Mm-hmm.
this thing's got to go back to the store. they're going to
Yep.
charge us a lot of money if we don't take it back
Yep.
because
And
somebody
there
else is
and
on the list
yeah,
and they're going to watch it next.
exactly. And there were windows, right? Like we had cable, but you couldn't see this on cable. You had to wait 3 months for the VHS window to die,
Oh yeah,
and then it would show up on HBO in the movie channel or whatever.
sometimes it take a
So
whole year.
yeah, so exactly 6 months. So you would go through this cycle of I watched it in the movie theater in '78, or I watched it in the movie theater in '86. Then I watched it in a home video in late '86 or late early '87, and then late '87, early '88. I watched it all over again on cable 50 more times.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people like us know these types of movies so
Yeah,
well. And like you said, when I watched the Manhattan Project, it was like somebody wrapped me in an '80s quilt,
right. It's like,
and I
oh,
just sat
where have
back and went,
you been?
"Oh, this is real. God, I haven't seen you, buddy, in so
Yeah,
long."
it's like we've been watching Real Genius and some of the others forever, and then
Yeah,
you watch this and you
this
go,
little
wait a
sucker
minute,
kind of
this was
snuck
right
away.
alongside.
Yeah, this little sucker snuck away, man.
Where have you been?
Yeah.
This was vital to the context of,
Mm-hmm.
it made me think a lot about movies in context where a lot of times I'll think, somebody will see a movie that's so old and they don't understand anything that was going on around it or the time period, and so you don't get that context, right? But I almost
Mm-hmm.
feel like now rediscovering movies like this, where it's like if you watch enough of a certain subgenre from a certain time period, it starts to build that context for you a little bit. In movies
Yeah.
like The Manhattan Project, guys, if you want to know what the 80s really felt like, this is a very good idea of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just the
Mm-hmm.
general tone of it. I know some of y'all might think this feels like some made for TV movie. This played in the theaters.
Yep. And it's got it. That's the like Marty's saying. It got a lot of things right about just portraying the environment because it was shot in '85, '86, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels like '85, '86. It looks like '85. You want to see a movie that without being affected, you can watch Back to the Future, but it's affected.
Yeah,
It's a big budget '80s movie. It's affected.
it's the
Yes,
fake
it's in the
80s.
'80s, but it's different. And I've heard you complain about this fake '80s feel before in
Yeah.
movies,
It's
and you're
all
right.
that's
This one,
left. Yeah.
yeah, and this one feels just naturally
Yeah,
80s,
this
very
one
80s.
really got it.
Yeah,
It's a time
yeah.
capsule where, and
Hmm.
maybe it is the nostalgia, but I don't know because sometimes I'll revisit other things I haven't seen in maybe 30 years and not get that same feeling. But this one was
Yeah.
like,
No,
I
this one smacked
remember
me with that
this.
stuff too, where I was just like, dang, and like you said, where have you been? Where in the
Hiding on
heck have you been?
Amazon
And
for $20. Yeah,
yeah, Christopher Collette, you did a fantastic job.
and
You know,
why
what
did it?
happened to that kid?
Why did it take me so long to put all these things together? This is the same guy from Sleepaway Camp and Firstborn.
Yep,
And yet I'm
yep,
not putting this together in the 80s. Maybe that's why his career didn't continue to go
right. It
because
didn't, right,
I
yeah, that makes
wasn't
sense.
putting
Yep.
two and two together, which means
Firstborn with
maybe
Terry Garr was a
somebody
good one
wasn't
too.
doing
Yeah, may
something.
have to
And
come
he
up
was
with that
actually
one
in
eventually.
that movie with Corey Haim.
Yeah, Corey Haim's in that movie. Yeah, and Robert Downey
Crazy,
Jr. Shit.
crazy.
Hmm.
And so
That's another
he was all over the
Nexus
place.
type
Yeah.
movie. Yeah, that was the other thing. One of the controllers, one of the scientists, or one of the guys who's one of the controllers in that movie. Oh god, he's a really good character actor. He was one of the guys who ran the monsters in Cabin in the Woods. The
Oh
bald dude.
yeah, yeah.
I can't remember his name, but I love him. He's in a lot of stuff.
See, it's
I'm
just like
sorry.
even Get Crazy, where we're like, you're the fire commissioner, but you're.
Yeah. Hmm.
So let's talk about the science fair. And so
So that's a real science fair they filmed in.
oh wow.
Yeah, they shot over 3 days at a real science fair with middle school kids.
Sounds familiar.
Hmm.
Uh, it made me feel like this movie was the most in tone similar to Real Genius, and especially when he finds the rest of the the other people,
The other
and
nerds.
they have
Yeah.
their listening device, and later the government has their listening device. I'm like, hey, this movie's
Hmm.
repeating itself, but it was like, oh,
It's like they run
here's
into
the
the. It's
rest
like
of
they
the
run
Big
into
Bang Theory characters.
Yeah, you just took it out of my mouth. I was just gonna say it's like they run into Leonard and the rest of the
I
gang.
know it's
Wallowitz is just like, Oh, you probably got shot up with blah blah blah. Do you have a weird taste in your
Mhm,
mouth? You know, and
mhm. So yeah, I really think that the creators, or at least some of the writers of Big Bang Theory,
hmm,
they remember this movie well.
agree.
You know, remember the one episode where Leonard's like, "Well, I still think it's cool," and he's in there playing with his lasers and shit, and it just reminds me so much of like, yeah, because back then you'd watch that scene where he'd get the mirrors out and he'd point the lasers here and here, and it was like, oh, that is kind of, you know, he lights
Yeah,
a cigar and he blows the smoke and he's looking at him like, that's fucking cool. But you'd have that feeling when you watch it at age
yeah,
13, 14,
yeah.
you
You're
know?
like, damn, he's cutting through the wall with
Mhm.
lasers.
And he
Meanwhile, you
says
don't
it's
think,
pretty good, yeah.
yeah. Meanwhile, you don't think that laser is going God knows how far out into the woods and cutting God knows
Mhm.
what. But they don't even bother with that. They're just
Like
like,
in
yeah,
Real
he's just cutting through
Genius,
the wall.
yeah,
Yeah,
where the laser went so far, you know.
yeah. It cut through the tree and the statue, and so good. Yeah, other than that, I mean, like I said, it kind of it turns into this weird at the end after they disarm the bomb. It turns into this weird sort of, you know,
Yeah,
green piece sort of
yeah.
message,
Peace, love,
which I
love.
get. It's about nuclear weapons
Yeah,
and
of course,
they're
yeah.
very volatile and possibly unsafe. I get, possibly, there's a whole debate about that. But other than that, I mean, I felt
Mm,
like it was a really good movie. It's well
I liked it.
paced.
Yeah.
Um,
They,
I felt like the romance between him and her was sort of organic. It didn't,
hmm
and it turning into this sort of kind of Bonnie and Clyde steal
hmm
the plutonium thing was kind of cool. It does take a weird turn in the third act.
Yeah, it felt like they're like, well, we threw this and we wanted to, well, we want to have the
Hmm.
nerds in there, and then we want to do this, and then they're suddenly on their side, even though they don't know him that well, but
Right,
and
exactly.
now he's getting a shot, and now
Yeah,
he's like, oh, I love you guys. It's almost like Electric Larry dosed up the kid in Manhattan
yeah,
Project, and he's all happy now and shit. And they didn't really know what to do, but they had to end the movie. So we're gonna
right.
disarm the bomb, and so you get this weird third act that's kind of like my rambling speech
Well,
right there, where we're just going from
it
one thing to
it
the
feels
next.
like they knew that they wanted a bomb disarming sequence, right? Like they knew they wanted this sequence where it wasn't the kid's fault that the bomb had to be disarmed, right?
Yeah,
Like
and you can just go
he,
home. It's cool.
yeah, like they unscrewed everything, it was all fine, but then suddenly it was like, oh, okay, the bomb charged up anyways. Why? Well, because you don't know how to make a bomb, kid.
Mhm.
And so then there's this great bomb disarming. It's very tense. It's a good sequence.
Yeah, I do like that as far as bomb disarming sequences go. It's very unique.
Hmm.
They all have to clip at the same time, all six of them.
Yeah, it was good. And the idea, I like the scene where he's like, does anybody have cutters? And everybody's just, or does anybody have a Phillips head? And everybody's handing him 9 different screwdrivers.
I
And
remember every scene.
yeah,
And then it seems like then he pulls one. It's like you already had a pair. It seemed like
well,
right where he pulls one
they
out.
don't have any more. It's he gives them all the, remember, because he asked for a Phillips head screwdriver first, and they try to
Mhm.
shove like 9 different screwdrivers at him. Then later he asked for a pair of clippers, and they don't have any extras, and
Mm.
he has to use his thumbnail clippers to clip the wire.
It still feels like when you watch that scene where they give him all the screwdrivers, it feels like and it's always felt this way to me. So seeing it again was one of those weird, fucking strange memories coming back. I feel like he's already got a screwdriver in his hand. I don't think he takes one from those guys.
I'd
Like
have
he
to
does
watch
like
it
this
back.
double take, and then he suddenly has one in his hand, and I've always
I
been like,
want to say
"What
he
is
takes
going
one from
on
him, but
here?"
yeah, I'd have to watch it
It's a
back. That's
weird
hilarious.
little. Maybe it's me, or it's just like it seems like it's a goof. But I remember that when I was 13, seeing that shit on the movie channel, thinking, "Oh,
Hmm.
haha, he's already got one." This movie also reminded me a little bit of Ruskies.
Ruskies, okay.
Yeah, a year later, not really teen science, but more precocious kids take in the Russian sailor, befriend him, and then he has a Moscow on the Hudson experience where he's like,
Right.
I want to be in America now. And
Fish out of water type shit. Yeah.
then has a similar third act, you know.
Yeah. It's it's like a watered down Iron Eagle, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Iron Eagle in the water.
Yeah, overall, I liked the movie quite a bit. Um, I think Lithgow's good in it. I like the kid. He comes off as smart without being a smart ass
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. Like he doesn't come off as a know-it-all. He just comes off as a really smart kid who has the answers to things
Mm-hmm.
that others don't. Like at one point she's in the she's in the kitchen trying to make orange juice out of frozen concentrate in that
Oh yeah,
can,
yeah.
and she's trying to get it out, and he's
I
just talking
remember it
to her, and
all.
he just takes it out of her hand and cracks a can opener on it, blows into it, and blam, and just keeps going. Right, like he's not trying to be a dick about it. He's just like, here's problem solved, blam.
So many moments of just
Hmm. So many moments, man. Yeah.
that have stuck with me, even though I'd forgotten that this is
Hmm.
where they'd come from. So
Yeah. It's
very
it's
bizarre
a
rediscovery. Yeah.
yeah, it's a fun film to rewatch again, and I'm so glad I accidentally dug it up. I somehow dug that film up and was like, oh, I'd forgotten all about this, and I
Mhm.
watched it immediately and was like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I really enjoyed this. So on a star rating, I'm going to give it 3.5 stars.
Okay.
I
Three and
think
a
it's a
half.
solid movie. I think it's one,
This is our out of five, by the way, audience.
yeah, out of five. I think it's one you can easily watch again. For me, maybe there's a little nostalgia creeping in there to give it an extra half a
Right.
star, but I think it's a solid 3.5 star movie.
Yeah, I'm going
Um,
three. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think
It's
you could
solid.
easily
Solid.
rewatchable.
Yeah. And if I watched it again and again, like Cats, or much better than Cats, my rating might improve over time with this one. I mean, things like
Mm,
throwing those frisbees down those hallways are just such
so
a
good.
nostalgic. Like, oh my
Yeah,
god, I forgot all about this, but I didn't forget about it.
I enjoyed a lot about it. I just like you said, you get to the scene with the nerds, and there's the
Hmm.
whole using the fire extinguisher to bust them out, and they're all drugged up, and it's kind of funny, and you've got the early stuff where he's playing soccer and he's figuring out how to. Oh, that's the other
Oh
thing we
yeah,
forgot
the
about is
soccer montage. Yeah.
yeah, the soccer montage. But one of the things we forgot about in the montage is how easy it is for him suddenly to get C4 explosive. That's the only part of the movie
Oh
that's
yeah, the kid
out of
from like up the creek
yeah,
or Combat Academy stops by from his movie momentarily and sells
yes,
some explosives. I'm glad you brought that
yeah,
up because I didn't write it down.
yeah. Out of all the things, weirdly about a kid,
Babies.
weirdly about a kid making a movie about a kid making an atomic weapon and stealing uranium to do so. The most unplausible thing about it is him buying C4 for some reason for me. That's the part where I was just like, huh? All right, hand wave, we'll move on. Where it's just like, oh, okay, sure, yeah. Because everybody knows somebody who's in the military who's willing to just sell you C4,
Right? Yeah.
right?
It's
Yeah,
the,
everybody knows somebody like that,
it's
right?
the
You're in high
80s.
school, you know.
You're in high school. It's
Yeah,
you're in Connecticut. You're white.
yeah.
No
What do you want?
problem. You
You want
know,
LSD? You want some coke? You want some weed? How about some C4?
you bring up another point here, and it was I know we're running a little long on this one, but got some stuff to say about this. So one of my final points on it was are they in school? Because they have a lot of time on their hands to do all this shit and run around all over the place and why aren't you drinking wine? Well, because I'm underage. But you're treating me like I'm not. So was there a confusion in an early script and then it felt a little weird to me like how
There's
old are they?
there's a couple of little bumpy spots in it for
Well,
sure.
I know he says he's underage at one point. They do
Right.
verify it, but it does seem like oh, is he like in his pre-college or no? He's in high school, but yeah, that was one
Yeah.
thing that was tripping me up a little bit. Maybe I was just didn't notice something or didn't catch something. You
Yeah,
think
it's just
after having
like
seen it so many times.
it has a couple of hand waves to make the movie. The C4 is a great example. Hey,
Hmm.
hand wave over how I know this guy. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry
I
about it.
got the C4. Obviously he's wearing camos, so he's in the army.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
obviously the army's corrupt and he stole it. We'll just move on from here.
You can tell I'm in the army. I'm wearing camo.
It's the guy. It's suddenly he's dealing with
Nobody's gonna
suddenly
miss
he's
that.
suddenly he's dealing with Don Rickles from Kelly's Heroes,
Right.
right?
It's a
Just,
small enough amount they don't have to report it, unlike this highly insane testing plutonium. But now everybody knows about it because everybody should know about it.
everybody should know about it. How dare you hide this from the public? Eco friendly. What did they call it on Reels of Justice? The with a Godzilla echo. What they called? They tried to say Godzilla was an echo something movie.
Oh, it's like Echo Terror or Echo
Echo
Horror.
terror. Yeah. Echo horror.
Funny
Yeah.
because I was
This is.
watching that Godzilla just last night, and then well, how does the movie start with the complete meltdown of a nuke plant that just happens to be in your backyard? You know, I guess those people knew about it though.
Yeah. And I guess in the end, what the overall message of the movie in the end is, do you really want the government moving into a town where you live and building a nuclear power plant or a place that does nuclear stuff without your knowledge?
Right?
Like, do you want secret labs making 99.9% weapons grade plutonium? There's a
Mhm.
great scene. There's a great scene where the kid, remember when he's walking with Lithgow outside of the on the grounds and he
Yeah,
leans
yeah.
down and he ties his shoe and he picks up a 5 leaf clover.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then they cut to he looks at the
They
clover
start
and
the
they cut to
Simpsons
him
people.
talking to Cynthia Dixon and he's like, blah 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 this, and they're obviously making. She's like, how do you know? He's like, look what I found. It's a 5 leaf clover, and she's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but that's. He goes, you know what the odds in that are? It's like there aren't even odds for it, and she goes, oh, that's just. I don't know. And then he takes that envelope out and he just
He's got
dumps like an
all of them.
entire
Yeah. Oh,
an
I
entire
remember it
envelope
all.
of like 300 5 leaf clovers, where
I
it's just like,
remember
what are you
it all.
talking about? Bam.
Yeah, that was before the three-eyed fish on the Simpsons people.
Yeah. It was an effective tool to kind of like point out how dangerous the whole thing was just like, look at all these abnormal clovers that are popping up, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not good.
No.
So, in the end, it's an eco movie. It's an eco friendly movie, I guess. But it's more like, more about like, hey, should people know what the heck the government's doing, especially if they're
Right?
going to do it right next to you?
Mm-hmm. So they're going to tear down the rock clubs and put up nuclear plants.
That's right.
And
Nobody needs that
I was thinking,
unless we can surf into the atmosphere on those nuclear bombs.
uh, maybe it's the nostalgia because of how old I was when I saw it, but watching it today, just before the recording, finishing it, uh, is it a tween movie of its time, or is it more of an adult movie of its time that just happens to have some tween stuff in it?
I mean, it's like war games. I think
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
or like Shrek, it's geared towards a younger audience, but there's built-in themes for older people, right? Like, I think an adult could watch the Manhattan Project and enjoy it and go, oh, I'm picking up on themes you probably aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a kid, you're sort of placing yourself in the kid's role and enjoying the adventure of foiling the government with the bomb and all that
Yeah.
type of stuff, right? Whereas the adults going, oh, I'm getting the echo message, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we really should know what's going on with the government, what's going on. So I feel like it works on multiple levels in that case.
Mm-hmm. And the monsters were using echolocation to find each other in that
Echo,
Godzilla movie, to go off on that rant.
echolocation, echo. I don't know. We said a lot of echo in
A
this
lot of
episode. Don't
echo. But
don't stop listening because of that. We'll stop next episode. We
but in
promise.
conclusion, if you're still with us, at
Yes.
10:12 p.m. approximately on New Year's Eve, start the Manhattan Project, and approximately at midnight they will disarm the bomb. I don't know if that's the actual time, but I am just being silly. That the Manhattan Project is not a New Year's movie,
Oh,
but
that's
you could
fantastic.
make it one
If
because
you wanted to,
you would hear your neighbors cheer when the bomb gets disarmed.
that's
So,
true. That's true.
and you would
So in
think,
conclusion, I guess get crazy. 2 stars from me, 2.5 from you,
mm-hmm,
and Manhattan Project 3 from you, 3.5 from me.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Well, we don't really seem to vary that much on this stuff. We'll have to find some more polarizing films, I
Yeah,
guess.
we're still building that early
Yeah.
foundation, and then
Yeah.
the
Get
further
going.
up
Oh,
we
we'll
get,
get
the
there
better
eventually.
we'll
We'll
get.
get there
Yeah.
eventually. All right. So what do you got for me this week?
Okay, so last week you said
Oh
your movie
God.
first, right?
Yeah,
So,
I think so.
okay, so this movie is I'm giving you a double New Year's assignment.
Okay.
If you choose to accept to watch it this way,
You want me to
on
watch two movies?
on no on just one, but on New Year's Eve, if you are so
Uh,
inclined to watch this week's film this way, start it
okay.
at 10:30 and 27 seconds because your film this week is When Harry Met Sally.
Oh, I was going to give you that one. I was
Ah,
so close
you're
to
so
giving you
close,
that one.
right? I had a feeling you might
Okay.
be too.
So I went a different route.
Mm-hmm.
So New Year's is about new beginnings, right? And new
Mm-hmm.
beginnings are sometimes about creating a new life or a new person for yourself, sort of splitting your life off into another reality, another possibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what multiverses are about, right? Like
Oh.
the idea that maybe this is the New Year's that you actually stuck to your resolution and you lost the weight, or you learned the karate, or you learned the woodworking, and you took a whole different path. So I'm going to give you the film Everything Everywhere All at
Ah, I
Once.
thought you might say that. I still haven't seen it. So,
I know you haven't. I want to talk to you about it. I think it's a good film. I don't want to color it for you, but yeah, that's the one I'm going to want. It won a buttload of Oscars, and
mm-hmm.
I think this is the first really Oscar heavy movie that we've really tackled,
True.
and it is kind of a, to me, again, because of the multiverse kind of thing and the
Mm-hmm.
idea of new lives coming out, or new
All right.
possibilities coming out of the new year. I think this is kind of an
Yeah.
appropriate
So two critically acclaimed ones
one.
next
Yeah,
week to start our year off, but is probably getting closer to springtime ish, I'm guessing, for you, or who knows when you're listening to this.
true. This should probably be a pretty good one, though. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think you and I are going to find. I mean, I know you haven't seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I imagine that you're probably going to like it. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but When Harry Met Sally is a hard movie to hate. So,
Yeah. But once again, you're getting me to watch another movie that I've put off watching, so that's fairly new.
yeah, and that's. I mean, honestly, I've told you that before. That's really one of the jealous kind of personal reasons that I
Mm-hmm.
did this podcast, is because I want to talk to you about films you haven't seen and that you probably aren't going to watch. And so,
Mm-hmm.
what a
No,
great way to make you
I
watch
kind
them.
of have that a little bit too.
Yeah.
With a little bit of the reevaluate this thrown in.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, that one. Oh, there was one. What was the one? The last one that we
The
did that was
Dark
so tough.
Star, yeah,
Oh, brother.
yeah.
My God. Oof. That's rough.
That's probably
And
the
I'm
new
sure. I'm
low,
sure
right?
eventually I'll have a couple of those for you too. But
Yeah,
we'll get there. Yeah.
but not next week. Next week we have two critically acclaimed films. So.
I'm super excited that you enjoyed the Manhattan Project so
Oh
much.
yeah,
I
that
I,
was a
I
fun. That
was.
was fun to go back to it. I have
Yeah.
fond memories of that one. So,
Same here. Same here. All right, kids. Well, I guess that's it.
all right, let us know what you
We'll see you
think.
next week.
Cool.
Talk about talk about these next ones.
Yeah.
Later, Marty.
Thanks.